The thought of getting audited is very stressful for most businesses. What can firms do to defend their client in the event of a sales tax audit?
The accounting firm actually plays an important role in the audit process. Most taxpayers have no idea how to defend themselves in a sales and use tax audit. Where the accounting firm comes in is based on their expertise. They can actually put together a set of work papers prior to the audit so they understand where the liability is. That involves several steps. Most importantly, though, is the reconciliation right from the start to make sure there aren't differences between what the taxpayer recorded in their books and records and what the taxpayer reported to the government. Whether the accountant did those reports or not, they need to start right there. Secondarily, they need to look at any transactions that were exempt from tax and make sure they support those transactions wholeheartedly with whatever documentation they have on file or if they have to go get that documentation. Thirdly is making sure that all the taxable transactions that are reported were calculated at the right tax rate. So you take the global set of transactions and you break them into taxable and non-taxable, and you look at each separately. And the most important ones are the non-taxable ones, because if those were categorized incorrectly, that's where the biggest liability is. So once you have an understanding of where your taxpayer sits in the liability exposure, then you can defend them more properly. Sometimes what I always recommend is I always have the government issue me a set of working papers first and see where they land, and whether they land on that from a stat sample or an actual basis examination. I look at it, compare it to my number, and if it's better than my number, I go with that number. If it's not better than my number, then I challenge the audit entirely with my audit working papers.
Is there technology that can help with that?
There certainly is. There's a lot of business intelligence tools. Most people use Excel, unfortunately, which means there's a lot of pivot tabling and a lot of manual analyses. But there's a lot of cloud computing products out there now that do total sales audits or transaction audits on transactions. They do validation algorithms on them. They do normalization techniques so that you can get the data in a more usable format for the audit. And you can look at more transactions, what we call on an actual basis, instead of on a sample basis, to get a more accurate result.